So, Trump Mobile.
Yeah.
Why this? Why now?
Listen, I think it's part of what we've just been focused on is creating utility and value for people, across the country. So many of the things that we did and have done over the last few years have really been out of necessity, right? We started Truth Social, not because we wanted to start a social media platform. It wasn't really something I ever had on my bingo card. But when we were cut off, when we were, censored, when we were, abandoned by all the usual suspects, we had to actually get involved in that game. We're doing that with crypto. We saw there was a time where we could call any bank in New York City and we could get a loan in about 2 minutes, and all of a sudden we get into the political specter and those people don't call us back, and not only do they not call us back, they debank us.
So you can't get a phone
close
now?
Our accounts. Well, I think there's been a lot of people that have, taken a lot of people's hard-working money. They haven't given them all that much value. They've then taken that same money and used it to fund causes that those people don't believe in. And so what we did was we wanted to get with the best in the industry, create a lot of value for $47 a month, get unlimited calling, unlimited texting, but also add other value that I think is really important. First, the call centers are in America, so we're employing American people. We're keeping your data in America. We've all understand, the liability and the potential issues with data breaches and people in other countries having your data. That's obviously a big talking point for a lot of people. You can keep your existing phone and your existing number, but if you also actually want to buy our hardware, we're going to be building phones in America, manufactured by Americans.
For how much money? The phone.
The phones, each plan's different depending on what you're doing and depending on what you're getting in that. So that's going to roll out shortly. But
I think that's interesting, the phone itself, because we had an analyst on our show with everything going on that came on and said, well, if you made an iPhone here, as opposed to China, it would cost like $3,500. But then I saw on your website, yours would be like $500. Is that true?
I believe that's correct. I know there's a couple of different things depending on the options and depending on what you do with the cameras, et cetera, et cetera. So there's going to be, there's going to be a range. But more importantly, I think as part of your overall plan that just comes with it for $47 a month, you're getting telehealth. You can call a doctor. Someone with 5 kids, we're always dealing with doctors, but be able to get that person on the phone for some of the little things and figure these out without having to go to your local hospital or your local clinic and wait in a line for hours. And also free roadside assistance, as part of that. So I think what we want to do is create an overall package where people are just getting a lot of value for their hard-earned money. I don't think a lot of people have done that. They sort of just get people hooked on a plan. They get there, people, there's extras, and you're sort of feed to death. I think what we wanted to do is really create something where you know what you're getting a a lot of value for your dollar, and we're creating utility for the people.
Name on it.
Correct.
The Trump numbers. I saw one of something was priced like $47.45 a month.
Yeah,
is that right?
$47.45 a month.
All right. So that's Trump branding.
Yep.
Don, the critics of you personally always say, "Well, here he is. He's just trading on his dad's name again." What do you think when you hear things like that?
Listen, I think I've been a businessman for 25 years.
Yep.
We've been a business family forever. We didn't magically become business people, when my father took office. I think what we've done is we've actually been, we've borne witness to a lot of the nonsense that so many Americans dealt with. We have been canceled. We've been doing this, and I've been doing this even personally for years. I was doing this and funding and creating some of these companies that are standing up for Americans who have been canceled, who may not have the same platform that I have or the ability to do these businesses when it wasn't so popular. I was taking companies public, a couple of years ago when we had no chance of ever coming back, but those Americans still understood there was a real sort of threat to them.
Different environment now, though. Does he benefit financially? He would benefit financially from this.
Well, my father's not involved in any of these things. In all fairness, if you turn on the news, he's involved in bigger things, and he understands, just how critical this is. So this is, Eric and I, we're running the Trump organization. We're doing these things.
How involved are you in this personally? This project.
We will be more. I'm a later adapter into this. I've spent a lot of time, frankly, focusing on the crypto side of things because I think that's the future of banking, and I think banking hasn't necessarily been all that egalitarian or fair to people these days.
Speaking of crypto, your dad's financial disclosure form came out, and I saw he had, I think it was $57.7 million in income from the crypto company World Financial Liberty that you guys are associated with.
World Liberty Financial,
World Liberty Financial. So he does benefit financially from your enterprise, you and Eric,
he has
right?
ownership, but he doesn't touch it, right? That's all walled off. Eric and I are the signatories on that. We manage the trust. We don't talk to him about it. He doesn't, get involved in that. But he did say and ran on a campaign that he was going to be an active proponent for crypto.
Yeah.
And again, it's because the people that we used to be able to call here no longer took our calls. We weren't just going to pick up our ball, go home, get in a corner, suck our thumb and cry for mommy. We actually said, hey, we're going to fight back, and we're going to take these things that we think are unfair and unjust, and we're going to fix that. And
Is that fight now centered around regulation? And if so, how do you think that industry, crypto, should be regulated?
Well, I think the regulation side, that's going to be government. I'm not involved on the regulation side, but he said and campaigned on the sort of unfair nature of what's happened in finance. If someone checks a bunch of woke boxes, they get a home loan that they can't possibly afford. Someone with a great credit score that happened to buy MAGA swag or bought a Bible, is on an FBI terror watch list over the last 4 years. We've seen that. So what we wanted to do was create something that is truly fair. So the democratization of finance is actually a really big theme of what we campaigned on, and we're trying to help create that.
Don't you create something, too, that could be open to outside influence, foreign investors, for example? That Trump meme coin got a lot of attention, could come on and maybe influence policy, potentially. Isn't there the potential for conflict there?
My father would have to be sitting there looking at names on the blockchain, and he's not exactly a guy that uses a computer all that much. So, no, I don't think so. I mean, if I wanted to do that kind of thing, I could, I guess, based on the precedent that's been set over the last 4 years, I could sell finger paintings for $500,000 and do pretty well. What we're actually doing is building real businesses backed by real people to help frankly, everyone, but especially a lot of people who have been underserved and forgotten in America.
Hey, a couple of, I don't know if they're personal questions, but political and personal business questions for you. How much of your time now is spent on business ventures, your non-family time, versus what you would describe as political ventures, your own time?
Well, I don't have political ventures. I spend a lot of time fighting for the America First movement. I guess I've created a bit of a platform for myself. I was very actively involved in making sure that we have a bench, because again, getting into politics, if you've watched on the 10-year anniversary of this, they've tried throwing my father in jail. They've tried killing him twice. They've tried throwing me in jail. I want to make sure that this movement, goes well beyond my father and his 4 years. I want to make sure that we, create that bench of America First warriors. And I think it took the last 4 years of insanity to actually help find those people who are actually fighters, who aren't just going to revert back to the old sort of neocon uniparty ways, and really be able to do what's right for America.
So how big of a part of that bench are you personally? So as you say, it's 10 years, right, since your father came down the escalator in this building, really got into politics, and now, say, 10 years from now, is Donald Trump Jr. the name on the...
I have no plans on doing any of that right now. It was really about finding the people who want to do that. I think my primary focus, you need both.
Yeah.
Right? You need people who understand that movement in politics, but you also need those people in the private sector, right? You can have, the most, America First, cabinet for the next 50 years. It doesn't matter if the private sector is still dominant sort of by, woke corporate America. And so, I've focused, my energies on the business side. I'll campaign for those people who I think, will bring the same fight and spirit.
That's changed a lot,
politics.
right?
Oh, 100%. Listen, I think
wouldn't you say, especially in technology?
Oh, well, yes. I think obviously still very dominant in that. I think, crypto leans very sort of libertarian. I think, AI is definitely, fairly dominated by the left, and I think, that's a scary prospect. And so I think you have to focus a lot of energy on that, making sure that all these messages get out, right? I mean, if you had a sort of a left-wing dominated AI, you'd be getting indoctrinated without even knowing it. The technology will get so good. It's not like what you were watching CNN a few years ago. You're like, I realize they're peddling a bunch of garbage. Like, I can see through that. AI will figure out how to target people and influence them in a way that you couldn't imagine. So, for us, it's about making sure that people really understand what's going on, and that has to be done in the corporate world as well. So that's my focus.
Venture or business that you're hinting at in AI?
No, not yet. I mean, again, I'm a neophyte fight when it comes to that world, but I would certainly invest in some of these businesses if I believe they weren't going to be sort of left-wing dominated to try to do that or help promote those things. But you got to make sure you cover that full spectrum. I think so many Americans who are watching, they've seen people get debanked. They see innocent, mothers that go to PTA meetings get thrown on terror watch lists. They're domestic terrorists because they don't want their children getting indoctrinated, with DEI and other garbage that's out there. So, I'll always fight for that. Whether I, run or not, I have no intention of doing that right now. And I think, again, the last 4 years, we've created a solid bench of people who will do that. Don't just revert back to the old ways. But truly understand what this movement's all about, and we'll continue to fight for it.
But if you did run, would you run for anything other than president?
Oh, I get it. Honestly, I have no idea. Haven't thought about it. That I'm asked a lot is a great honor. I guess it means I've been fairly effective in doing, what I did on, on the political side. But, I think it's about creating that bench and making sure we have that runway for the years to come. Okay.
One more then. Given the time we're having this conversation, do you have any thoughts on political violence and/or the political rhetoric in this country? You know what happened in Minnesota recently, but of course your family is familiar with threats and political threats.
Listen, my father's been shot at. I've been tried to, the other side has tried jailing me. They talk a lot about, the rhetoric and the violence, and yet it seems to be mostly caused by them. The 2020 summer of love did not seem like a summer of love. The politicians at high-level places encouraging people to attack my father did not seem fair. If Republicans were doing that, they'd be thrown in jail. When a Democrat does it, it's to preserve democracy. You
don't think everybody's got to tune it down a little bit or turn it down a little bit?
Listen, I think what we have to actually do, I would love to see all of that turned down, but I think I'm seeing it come from the left. Everyone talks about Minnesota, but they don't talk about the guy seems to be a leftist. It's a Minnesota politician, or guy who was appointed by the Democrat governor, vice presidential candidate for the Democrat Party, Tim Walz. The guy that committed those atrocities this weekend is a Democrat that worked for Tim Walz, that had the flyers about the No Kings thing in there.
Now, I'm not sure about that, by the way, from what I've seen. I think he voted for your dad and things like that, from what I've seen.
I'll believe that when I see it. But he was appointed by Tim Walz, a Democrat governor who's an ardent leftist pushing these things, and he attacked someone who voted against. He attacked a Democrat who voted against giving taxpayer funding and free health care to illegals across America. I mean, that doesn't seem like that should be a controversial thing to vote against. But if you're a Democrat that breaks away from the Democrats, they'll commit violence amongst themselves, it seems. And so that is scary. That should upset a lot of people. But, watching the framing that this is some sort of MAGA person, it's just so predictable at this point. It's such nonsense. And then the second, no different than the trans shooter shooting up a Catholic school. They'll never release the manifesto. I wonder what their motives could be. It couldn't be that they were on 15 years of hormones and indoctrinated with a bunch of left-wing psychoses over 15 years that would cause them to shoot up a school. Well, I guess we'll never know the true motive, Colin. We'll never know the motive. Give me a break. Does anyone believe this crap anymore? It's absolutely disgusting. But when you do have, the virtual entirety of the mainstream media behind you, and they got away with a lot more when they had almost the entirety of big tech behind them. I think some of that shifted. I think a lot of that shifted with Elon buying X and allowing for actual free speech, not free speech for thee, but not for me. It changed things a lot. So I think people are coming to it, and I think they're forming their own conclusions. I think that's really important.
How is everything with Elon, by the way, before we go?
Listen, it seems like it's fine. I mean, the guy is a genius doing incredible things. One of the true great innovators, and there's going to be fights, and that's fine. They're both people that wear their heart on their sleeve. They tell you what they're thinking, and I think that's fine, and I think he's going to continue to do great things.
Donald Trump Jr., thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.